Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seth Rosczewski Podcast. I am back in the house today with a very familiar guest, Mr. Rich Little. Rich, thanks for coming by today.
Thank you very much. You don't have to use the Mr. Rich is good enough for me.
We're going to be discussing the Karen Reed trial, the second part of the trial, and a little bit of the first trial as well. As a lot of you know, the trial just concluded, and a verdict has been found, and we're just going to dive on into this and discuss it. Today, I got a mocha blend. Rich has got a 6-bean blend right here. Links in the bio. Support the show. Join the community. Drink your coffee with us every Sunday morning. All right, so the trial just ended. And do we want to go into the verdict starting off, or do we just want to go into...
Sure, let's talk about it. It ended less than 2 weeks ago, or just about 2 weeks ago. And the charges were a murder charge in the second degree, leaving the scene of a accident after causing bodily harm, and she was found not guilty on anything to deal with a collision. They could not prove a collision, and the jury found her not guilty on that. The only part that she was found guilty on, and this was the defense added this on at the very end of the trial, that they could find her guilty of OUI, operating under the influence, which in Massachusetts is driving while having a blood alcohol level of 0.8 or above. So, or is it 0.08, not being a drinker?
0.08.
0.08
Yeah,
or above.
0.08.
So they found her guilty on that and not guilty on all the other charges. So here we are. We have a verdict, but it's not over.
Right, there's a civil suit that's going to be happening.
Yeah,
right?
And that civil suit, I would think, and attorneys have expressed that the civil suits are going to really be in a weakened state now. If she's going to be sued by John O'Keefe's family, that this has been weakened by the fact that the collision was not proven.
Right.
I guess they can go through with their civil suit, but and the burden of proof in the civil suit is much less than with a criminal case where you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil suits it's just a preponderance of evidence. I think the civil suits are not just against Karen Reed, they're also against the two drinking establishments that they frequented before the accident, whatever happened.
Right.
I think there's civil suits against those two establishments. And the reason is because establishments that serve alcohol have liability insurance, and therefore would be much easier to bring suit against because they have insurance. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But where we stand right now is we have found no justice for Officer O'Keefe. His family is still grieving. There's been no closure on that. The jury has spoken. And I don't know if you saw the interview with the foreman of the jury.
Yes, I did.
And to me, that was a really eye-opening interview that he gave.
Right.
And
I saw it on CNN.
He explained the reasons why she was found not guilty. And one of the things was that the expert witnesses disagreed on whether or not a collision, and to him and the jury members, it was more likely that if he had been hit by a car, he would have had much more serious injuries, especially in the lower extremities where the car would have hit him. If it was around the taillight, it would have hit him in the rib area, in the leg area, at the rear bumper, and there wasn't anything.
There was no bruising.
There was no bruising. There were no broken bones.
Right.
And so that kind of eliminated that. And the foreman of the jury was really curious about the fact that they had never investigated the house on which the lawn Officer O'Keefe was found. They did not inspect that house. They did not examine that house. And the foreman of the jury said, if a body was found on my front lawn, the police would have been banging at the door and wanting to look inside. And the implication was that I got from his interview was, why didn't they enter the house? Well, the house was owned by a police officer.
Yeah, there were multiple police officers there that night.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And there were multiple officers in that family. The family that owned the home where John O'Keefe was found on the front lawn, they're heavily connected in law enforcement. One brother, now retired, Boston PD. Another brother, Canton PD. Another brother involved in Canton politics on the Board of Selectmen. So heavily connected family within town, within the law enforcement community. And there's that theory that people in law enforcement look after each other. And that's always going to be said about this particular case.
Now, do you feel like it was, like for me, I see two different possibilities. If that was going to be the case, if it was, because they were cops and they got kind of just waived, do you think it was like a bang on the door? Hey, what happened? You mind if we come in? No, nothing. He wasn't here. We don't know where he was supposed to come here. Or do you think it was a ring? Hey, this happened, or like a more organized thing? Or do you think it was
I don't know. I think that would be pure conjecture on how it all went down. But a police officer from the Canton PD never entered that premises, according to testimony, until about 8 o'clock that morning. And the body of John O'Keefe was discovered and transported between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, and that's where all the activity was occurring with the first responders. Was right around 6 o'clock when he was transported to Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton.
Right.
But the police never entered the premise, and my understanding is that they never investigated the premises, and they didn't conduct interviews. They had a group chat, is what they did. Had 4 or 5 people there, and one of the officers talked with them. Yeah. And that's not an investigation. That's just a conversation, right?
That to me, it just seems crazy because like, it's just, the word's escaping me, but I feel like it's a issue because the Canton police and then the other police, I feel like it should have been like the state police were investigating.
Yes, well, the state police investigate all suspicious deaths in Massachusetts, and that's the protocol. And so after Mr. O'Keefe was declared deceased, and that was at the hospital because they tried to revive him. After that, it became a state police involvement. And the state police who got involved was also from Canton. State police officer by the name of Michael Proctor, who knew these people.
Oh my God!
At the Albert residence at 34 Fairview, and that presented itself as conflict of interest, and
that's what I was looking to say.
That shouldn't have come down that way. But getting back to the trial, right? We're talking about the 2 trials. I think of it as one case, part 1, part 2.
Right.
And they were a little bit different dynamics. It took them longer to find the first jury than it did the second, by a few days. The first trial was about 2 months in length. and the second one was a month and a half. Jury deliberations, the first trial, they deliberated about 25 hours before saying that they could not find a conclusion, either guilty or not guilty. And then after the fact, we find out that the jurors were confused by the instructions on the jury ballot and that they had indeed thought she was not guilty on some of the charges,
Right.
but thought that they had to reach a conclusion on the 3 charges as a package.
Right.
And things like that happen, and therefore it was called a mistrial, and the district attorney's office decided that they would have a second trial. They didn't alter the charges. There's always been conjecture that maybe they should have dropped the murder charge because that was going to be a reach to try to prove that
homicide.
that it was murdered. That John O'Keefe was murdered.
Right.
And here we are. She's been found not guilty, and still we have a suspicious death. And where do we go from there? The case is over as far as the court and Karen Reed can say. The criminal case is over. But where do we go from here? Is that the end of it? Or should it be the end of it?
I think it should just kind of be the end of it, but it's not going to be the end because you're always going to have people pressing on both sides.
People are going to be talking about this case, and people are going to be talking about the presentation in court for the next 100 years. This is going to be in law schools all over over America, that this is how a case was presented, and then a mistrial, and then tried again. And there's public interest nationwide. And I don't know why, but it's certainly tied to social media. This is one of the first cases where social media really got involved, heavily involved. You know, we have our little podcast here. If you look it up on YouTube, my word,
oh my God,
it just goes on and on. There's literally hundreds of podcasts dealing with the trial, the crime, and the trial and the acquittal of.
And then you get the live coverage too from all the news agencies, you know, and then everybody has their own side thing, and the amount of views that these videos are getting is insane. I've seen videos that were posted 12, 13 hours ago that were getting 80,000 views in the first 12 hours, which to me is unbelievable.
Ian Carney, who is known as Turtle Boy, who's been doing social media now for quite a few years.
I tried to get him on my show. I reached out to him and we talked about it, but it just the timing and stuff didn't work out. I was pushing hard.
He would be an interesting one to have on your show.
I would love to have him. Clip this and send it to him. Tell him, Turtle Boy, this is a great platform. You should totally come by. I got good coffee.
You got the coffee ready?
I got the coffee.
The coffee's hot. So where do we go from here? Well, it was announced yesterday where Karen Reed is going and where the attorneys, especially Alan Jackson, is going, because it was announced yesterday both a preliminary talks for a movie and preliminary talks for a book.
Oh, I'm sure that all this stuff is.
And I'm sure that Karen Reed is a lot brighter than I am, and I've written a book or two or three. I'm sure she could do a better job than I could, and would a book written by her, I'm sure, would be a bestseller.
Oh, I'm sure. With the amount of coverage.
And I think I kind of wonder if that is not the plan as trial number 2 was going along, because she did interviews on several TV outlets. In fact, a lot of people thought that those were going to come back to haunt her in the trial because they were allowed as evidence in the trial. And she admitted in several of those TV interviews that she had been drinking, and she had had quite a few drinks. And as a result, I think it was easy for them to say she's guilty on the OUI charge.
So maybe we can talk about why they actually brought the OUI charge. So, because they couldn't find her, innocent, and then she just walks. It was either the OUI or...
Well, the defense added that possible charge, I think, to give the jury an out.
So it's kind of like a tactical move.
Yes, it was a tactical move on the defense. In retrospect, that was a brilliant move.
Yeah, it was a great idea. It worked for them.
Because they eliminated the three most serious charges, which could have involved jail time, prison time, and allowed them to find her guilty of operating under the influence, which she kind of admitted she did when they had those TV presentations on, and several of them she admitted that she had been drinking.
Yeah. So what did the trial look like? What was different about it this spin around?
It was much shorter.
Right.
Yeah, the first trial, the prosecution had 43 plus witnesses, and including some testimony from minors, John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, and only one of them testified in trial number 2. But the number of witnesses for the prosecution was much less this time, and consequently the trial was much less. They had numerous individuals testified how bad it was snowing.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, how many do you need? And you're showing the video.
I know.
The dash cam from the police car as it's responding, or to the ambulance when it's responding to the scene, and it's snowing. So they cut that down. They only brought in witnesses who were on the scene. They did bring a weatherman, a meteorologist. Interestingly enough, they didn't bring a meteorologist from any of the Boston TV stations. They brought a meteorologist from WATD down in Marshfield.
Oh, that's crazy.
Rod Gilman.
Yep.
And I think it's Rob Gilman. And he testified for the prosecution. And he testified that it was snowing. It was classified as a blizzard. And it did not really start snowing heavily until after 6 a.m., which was after the supposed time of Mr. O'Keefe's demise, which was estimated to be somewhere in the 12:30, 12:45 range,
Right.
according to the prosecution. So there was a lapse between the time of the alleged incident and when it started snowing heavily.
So, what does this mean for the O'Keefe family? Where are they at, do you think, at this moment?
They're still grieving, and you have to feel badly for them because it's put their family in a turmoil. You can't imagine what they must have gone through, first losing a daughter, and then 6 months later losing a son-in-law, both to illness.
Right.
And then having the person who stepped up to take care of these younger children, who are now teenagers, but they were younger. Don't quote me on this, but I'm thinking in the 5 and 3 age range when he took over as the parent of of his sister's 2 children, and now they've lost him. So they've lost 3 people in the family suddenly, and there seems to be, this particular case seems to be something that could have been avoided. This was a tragic death.
Yeah.
And I would believe, this family would believe somebody is responsible, and somebody is, but the jury didn't think that Karen Reed was responsible. And I don't know where they stand as far as, I'm sure that they still probably are convinced, because it's easy to be convinced that she's responsible, but you have to go by what the jury said. And the prosecutor, the hired prosecutor, who was not the prosecutor of Part 1, Karen Reed, 1.0'd,
Yeah, episode 1.
That was Adam Lally, and he is one of the prosecutors in Norfolk County. Hank Brennan, who is an attorney, usually a defense attorney, in fact, represented Whitey Bulger when Whitey was flying back and forth between Plymouth House of Correction and Boston via Coast Guard helicopter.
That's so crazy.
Hank Brennan was one of Whitey Bulger's attorneys.
Yeah.
And
What a career.
I'm sorry?
What a career.
Yes.
You know, that's
And because of his expertise with the law, Michael Morrissey, the district attorney in Norfolk County, had him come in and hired him at he did it at a reduced rate, but his initial costs were $250,000, and he hasn't turned in the final bill yet.
yeah.
So the cost of that particular special attorney to come in is probably going to be in excess of $500,000, which the taxpayers of Massachusetts are going to have to foot. Plus, those expert witnesses on both sides, somebody has to pay them.
Right.
Has to pay their travel, has to pay their expertise, has to pay for all of their documentation.
Per diem, rooming,
Yes,
everything.
whatever it is, somebody's going to get a bill.
Yeah.
And then the witnesses for Karen Reed, and they had some excellent witnesses. The 2 crash reconstructionists from Arca, they did some on video experiments that were convincing.
Right.
Their expert from California, Dr. Russell, emergency room doctor, expert on dog bites. She was just an outstanding witness and knew her stuff. And for the prosecution. You know, the prosecution had a brain surgeon from Miami come up and testify that what he saw in the autopsy photos concerning the damages to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's skull and to the damages in the front of his face, under his eye, laceration, etc. Outstanding witnesses. And those witnesses cost money.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the ones for the prosecution, a company by the name of, I think it was Aperture, crash reconstructionists, they submitted a bill to the Commonwealth in the area of somewhere around $400,000.
Oh, my God.
So we're probably talking between Part 1 and Part 2, we're talking about millions of dollars
Yeah.
that were spent by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to find this particular suspect not guilty or acquitted of the charges.
Do you think we'll ever find someone?
Personally,
Yeah.
no.
No. You think that this will just kind of be a cold case?
I think this is something that they're going to be talking about 20 years from now, 50 years from now. Like we were talking with Caroline about the Black Dahlia case.
Yeah.
What happens back in late 1940. Here we are, right, 2025. They're still talking about that case.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Caroline's my girlfriend, who's our director. She's the one who's switching the cameras. She does all the muscle behind the work, or behind the scenes. But the Black Dahlia is a case that happened in California, right?
Yes.
Yeah, California. That's it. That's an episode that I'd like to do.
Yes.
Talk about it. Maybe have a member of her
And
family.
Caroline should get involved because she's related to the Black Dahlia.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
You know, my family has. I'm not glorifying it at all. I'm just discussing it. But my family has a tragedy in it. My aunt, who I had not met, she had passed away before I was born, and she was the first case, murder case, that used DNA testing in
Interesting.
Massachusetts, yeah.
Interesting.
It was a case in Brockton, yeah.
When we're talking about previous cases, we've talked several times about my favorite case, which is Lizzie Borden, right?
Yes, Lizzie. Go Lizzie.
Well, Lizzie Borden case was one of the first cases in the United States where there were crime scene photos taken.
Really?
The police department asked a photographer to take pictures of the two deceased members of the Borden family, Mr. Andrew Borden and his second wife. His first wife was deceased, his second wife, Abby Borden, and took pictures of the scene as the investigator saw it. So it was one of the first cases in the United States where crime scene photos were introduced into the court case. One of the first cases in the world where crime scene photos were taken was a year before in London with the Jack the Ripper case. There were photographs taken of those particular crime scenes.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah.
There's a whole section of like older true crime that I want to go into, like the Zodiac Killer.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Oh, sure.
That's a really interesting situation.
We could do a week on that.
Yeah, the Zodiac Killer is crazy. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, he left encrypted messages multiple times claiming that he'd write some in English or whatever language it was. And then he'd have this encrypted message. And in that message, he said that, that's his name and what happened, his account and his name and stuff is inside the cryptic message. But people haven't been able to break them I think it happened in the 60s or 70s?
Maybe artificial intelligence will take care of that like
Maybe.
it does with so many other things.
Yeah, so about AI.
Yes, we talked about that as
yeah.
far as the John O'Keefe, Karen Reed story.
Right.
And
So how do you feel about AI and them bringing AI into the courtroom?
I can't see how they're going to stop it because it's into everything else. We see it. I see it on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
In the classroom. I use it on a almost daily basis to answer questions.
I use it more than I use Google now because I feel like with Google, you're not getting a straight up answer. If I need a straight up answer, I just go right to ChatGPT, the app on my phone. It's more versatile than Google is.
Right.
I get a better rapport.
So we're talking about AI and the Karen Reed case. After the verdict, it was reported that someone digitized the autopsy photo of Officer O'Keefe's arm wounds, scratches, abrasions, which the prosecution said were caused by being contacted with the rear of Karen Reed's Lexus SUV. And they asked ChatGPT to what would cause wounds like this. And in a matter of seconds, it came back that those wounds were probably caused by an animal, probably a large dog.
Right. Which is not at all in correlation with what they're
And
claiming.
and this was the claim that Dr. Russell, the lady from California, the emergency room doctor, who's a dog bite expert, this was her claims that they were dog teeth marks and scratch marks.
Right.
And that was her conclusion. And she's got a ton of experience and was originally from Massachusetts. I found that interesting. She was the first female police officer for the Medford Police Department, north of Boston, and then went to UMass Medical and became a doctor and moved to California and worked in emergency rooms out there for decades.
Right.
So comes with a wealth of experience. So I think you're going to see AI in cases more and more.
How do you feel about sealed jury lists? Keeping the people.
I can see the reason why Judge Beverly Cannoni said yesterday that she was going to seal it indefinitely. She didn't say permanently. She said indefinitely.
Right.
And the rationale was that some of the jury members have expressed to the court that they feel possible intimidation and endangerment if their names are released. Because it's only a matter of time between if their names are released, then their addresses are going to be released.
Oh, for sure.
And you've noticed that several of the jurors have been public, have made themselves public. The foreman of the jury has done a couple of interviews, but did not release his name. There were a couple of other jury members who have spoken and did give their name. But I can see why it should be sealed. Yeah. I know the media. We used to say the press, but because that implied newspapers. But I know the media thinks they're entitled, always entitled, under the Freedom of Information Act. Anything that's conducted in a public, like a public court, then they should have access to that. I think if it endangers somebody, or even the feeling that they're being endangered, either real or imagined, they are the persons who feel endangered.
Right.
And they're doing a public service. Being on a jury is not an easy job. And I've done it a couple of times, never a high-profile case like this. And I can't imagine the public scrutiny that everybody's under, witnesses are under, but that kind of goes away because, as Michael Morrissey, when asked about this case, what did he say in his comment? 4 words. The jury has spoken.
Yeah.
And that's the final line in this, as far as Karen Reed 1.0 and 2.0. That's the final line for that particular event. She can't be tried again, not criminally, and so case closed. So I think if those people feel like they should warrant being protected, then they should be.
You had said that you have served on the jury before.
Yes.
I've never had the opportunity to serve on the jury. Do you feel...
You will now.
Oh, now I will.
You'll be
Now I
called.
will. Now
You'll
I
be
will.
called.
At some point. It'll happen next week.
That's right.
You know, right in the middle of the busiest time for me. Anyways, you had said that you served on the jury.
Yes.
Do you feel that... Well, I know it's in the Constitution stating that, you know, you'll be judged by your peers.
Right.
Speedy trial, all that. Do you feel that there should be such thing as a professional jury, people who do it for a living, opposed to peers? How do you feel about that? Do you think it should be changed, or do you think it should be an option?
I've never really thought of that. I think it's best the way it is now because of the randomness.
Right.
And it took them, what did I say? In the first trial, it took them 2 weeks, just about 2 weeks to select the jury. And in this latest 2.0, it was 10 days, 10 court days. So that included 16 jury members because they picked 12 and then 4 alternates. And then they randomly pick out, like bingo, they pick out the numbers out of the drum, and that decides which 12 out of the 16 are going to be the jury.
Would you have wanted to serve on this jury?
No.
No?
I do not think I would want... I don't think I would have been qualified to do it.
Right.
Because I think I came into it with some personal biases.
Right.
About... first of all, I did not think that she should have been charged with a murder charge.
Yeah.
I think that was a reach. And I think that got into social media, and the fact that she'd been charged with something that a lot of people thought, wow, that could have been me.
Yeah.
They could have been charged with murder.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really got cranked up about her being charged, and she had a lot of support both during trial number 1 and trial number 2.
I'm relatively young, and I've never seen protests for a court case the way that I saw them for this Karen Reed
And there's a
case.
reason for that.
And I remember, and Caroline can probably attest to it too. I remember going down Route 3, going down Route 3 South and seeing just people on the bridges, you know, for the past 2 years, it's been about 2 years.
Yeah.
For this, right. Yeah. And I was always like, why are these people? At that point, I just didn't understand the case. I didn't bother to look into it. It wasn't something that I was interested in. I'm like, why are these people wasting their time? But yeah, it's
So we're 2022 is when the event occurred, and in January, so we're 3 years plus.
Yeah, 3, yeah.
And it started to gain momentum when another agency, which they skirted all around during the court cases, they kept saying, you were interviewed or you were asked questions by another agency, not the Canton Police Department, not the Massachusetts State Police. Well, this was in reference to a federal investigation about the improprieties of the Canton Police and the State Police in this particular case. So that was referred to all through both cases, and they never really came out and said, well, there was a federal investigation about the investigation of this case, the
So the
improprieties.
FBI was involved?
Either that or the Department of Justice, which probably a combination of the two. And they had a hearing on it and asked witnesses to come in.
Really? Huh.
And, you know, there's so many suspicious things that went on that with some of the witnesses for the prosecution, destroying of evidence.
Yeah.
And I think you and I talked a little bit about this during the week, about if you have a phone and you have your emails on it, and you have text messages on it, and you have GPS locations on it, can you legally erase that? And the answer is sure. It's your phone. You can do what you want. However, if somebody calls you and said, "Hey, Seth, this is me. I'm in trouble. This is what happened. What should I do?" And you say, "Gee, I don't know. Let me get back to you." And can you erase that from your phone? The answer is, if that was a crime that person is calling you about, technically that's evidence about the crime. And you can't ditch that evidence.
Right.
And if a lawyer will never tell you these days, because there've been people brought to court on it, you can't ditch what's on your phone if it involves some type of criminal activity. Here we have individuals who changed their phone, updated their phone, which deleted materials, destroyed their phone, took the SIM card up and cut it apart, threw the SIM card in one dumpster, threw the phone in another dumpster on a military reservation, just days before the court order came out to preserve evidence.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do that? And several of these people were in law enforcement. They ditched their phones, they changed their phones, they destroyed their phones. That, to me, that's suspicious.
Do you suspect any foul play?
Well, what do you think? We have...
Me personally?
Yes.
If I feel comfortable giving my opinion, and my opinion is I feel that Karen dropped John off at the O'Keefe at the
Albert residence?
Albert residence, yeah. It's Albert Street, right?
No, 34 Fairview.
Fairview, that's what it was. Okay, yeah. I haven't looked at a map in a minute. Yeah, so at the Albert residence, and then he went inside. I think some form of an altercation broke out. I think the women that were there kind of got involved, and then I think I forget the gentleman's name, but he was a trained fighter, also a Boston police officer, I believe, or Kansas.
Well, that was he was a son of the police officer.
And I think that there was a physical altercation, and he got dragged outside, and the dog got involved in it, bit him, and, you know, basically, like, yeah, it just, I think, yeah.
Well,
Was John O'Keefe a lefty or a righty?
I'm not sure.
Which arm was the mark?
I believe it was right arm.
It was the right arm marks? Because if the dog's biting on his right arm, that's disabling his primary weapon, his hands.
Yeah, it's your natural reaction.
You know,
when dog comes at you is to protect yourself. Because
that's just my uneducated opinion.
This is going to sound strange. I used to, I think I told you, I used to work in a prison.
Right.
And I wasn't in prison. I was a teacher there.
Right.
And so this one evening we had an open house, and they wanted to show how a dog is trained to disable somebody. So they had to get a volunteer. So I volunteered. So they suited me all up in this protective gear. And I was told by the officer who was with this canine that whatever you present first to the dog, that's what they're going to latch on to. So put out first what's got the most protection on it, which is your arm, because you're wearing something underneath to protect your arm, and then you're wearing some heavy clothing on top of it, and you put your arm out, which is a natural thing to do.
Right.
You put your hand out, he's going to bite your hand.
Yeah.
So you put your arm out, and they went for the arm, and that's. I could see the bruise marks through all the protective gear that I was wearing. I had bruise marks.
Oh, wow.
No punctures.
Yeah.
No scratches.
Just force. Yeah.
Just straight force. And so that's what those particular wounds look like. But the story goes on.
Yeah. It's really an interesting case. And there's so much that you have to assume. And I always try to take the path of, like, you know, what causes less assumptions.
Right.
You know? Like, this is totally off, but it's a way I'm going to explain it. Like, I was having a conversation with someone about the pyramids in Egypt, and they were like, oh, well, aliens built the pyramids. I'm like, what assumes less assumptions? Aliens came down and built the pyramids and dipped, and now we haven't seen them ever? Or we built the pyramids and just didn't record it, or the records got lost somewhere, destroyed by time. What causes less assumptions? Yeah, so that's kind of the route that I like to take, but yeah, no one really knows.
Well, this is going to go on for a long time. This conversation is going to go on, not hours,
Right.
Because we have a limited time.
Yeah.
But the conversation about what happened
Yeah.
is going to go on for decades.
Yeah. Well, they had interns working with the Karen Reed team.
Well,
They were Harvard law interns, right? There were like 6 of them.
there were interns there. There was also some interns there from Alan Jackson's law firm, of course, that which included himself and Liza Little, no relation to me. Would be good if she was, because we could get her on the show.
That'd be such an awesome discussion.
That they had interns that are involved in that law firm. And then, of course, you had 2 other attorneys. Attorney Yannetti, who's from around here. Actually, I think he has an office in Dedham, Massachusetts attorney. And then you had this new attorney that came on for the second trial, which is Attorney Alessi, who is a big-name attorney in New York, who does a lot of environmental issues. But he is a really professional, high-pressure attorney. And you could tell by some of his testimony and questions that he asked witnesses, and that he just has got a ton of experience and knows what he's doing. So that was her law team. But there were other interns there from Harvard, and you could see them sitting up when you went. They went to the podium and showed who was ever speaking at the podium, whether it be the prosecutor or the attorney for the defense. You could see like 2 or 3 people sitting behind Karen Reed's family, and they were interns.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. Nothing about this is great.
No.
But it's a good way to teach. It's a good way to save resources, money. And it's just, and you're building the future.
Right.
You know, especially where this is such a high profile case.
Well, this has been an interesting topic.
Yeah. I would love to talk about the Black Dahlia in the following weeks.
Right.
Next week or so.
We got to do some clarification on William Bradford. We did one a few weeks ago on William Bradford.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to do that right now?
We could do it right now.
Sure.
If you want to,
and
yeah.
then if you want to slice it in or whatever.
Yeah.
I was explaining, and we've had some comments. You wanted to give a shout out to somebody on one.
Oh, that's right.
You wanted
Beth. Let me grab my laptop.
Okay.
It's right here.
So while you're looking that up, I wanted to give some explanation of why I considered William Bradford to be a tyrant in Plymouth Plantation. And do you have it?
Yep. Beth Burns, 1897. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. We appreciate your comments. Keep them coming. So thank you to everyone who really supports the show. It means a lot, you know?
Well, I wanted to, and Beth commented on William Bradford being a tyrant. And one of the most important things that I left out is that when William Bradford and his wife traveled to the New World on the Mayflower in 1620, they had a son who was approximately 13 years old, and they left him back in UK. And for whatever reason, whether it be safety reasons or whatever, so he stayed over there. And they came over here. And for landfall was originally Provincetown. And you and I, being in Massachusetts, we know where Provincetown is. It's at the tip of Cape Cod. And that was the first land where they dropped anchor. And that's where the Mayflower Compact was written. And that's where they first went ashore. And what they were looking for was harbor and fresh water. And they had a smaller boat that they put together that was on the deck of the Mayflower. And they sailed down the arm of Cape Cod looking for fresh water and a good harbor. And while they were doing this, and William Bradford was part of the expedition team that went down looking for the water and a safe harbor. And while he was doing this, and this was in December of 1620, his wife, it's theorized that she jumped off of the Mayflower and drowned.
Oh, my God.
And we can only theorize what caused her to do that. Maybe the fact of leaving her son in UK, whatever other reason. But when he recorded this in his journal, and he recorded everything in his journal because he had a dossier on everybody, and what everybody was doing, he was into everybody's business. And he wrote in the third person that she had his wife, he said, and I believe her name was Alice, Bradford was drowned, wife of Master William Bradford. He wrote it in the third person, and that's all he put in was just that. Wow. Kind of a cold two-sentence entry into his journal, and never went any further than that.
Do you think that was foreshadowing his future reign of Plymouth?
No, I think he had designs on being in politics when he arrived. He was the second one to sign the Mayflower Compact, where everybody said, all the men said, we're here. We know we're not where we're supposed to be as far as the charter goes, but we're going to try to make this work.
Right.
And he was the second one to sign it.
Alrighty.
First one being John Carver.
Yeah.
And John Carver was the first governor. And when John Carver passed away the following April, William Bradford became governor.
Yes, he did. That episode is live on the YouTube channel. I'll link it down below. But we've also got episode 1 of the Karen Reed episode that's live right now as well. That was done a few weeks ago,
right.
Where we broke down and basically, animated, not really animated, but we saw like with a representation how the cars were moving and,
how the taillight was actually broken. And it's interesting in that, going back to the Karen Reed case, as the Karen Reed second trial concluded, when Alan Jackson gave his closing remarks, he, as one of the items that he showed on the screen was the photograph that we used in that.
Yes, we did.
To show her departing from John O'Keefe's house at 5:02 in the morning. And from the picture that the Ring camera took as the vehicle exited the driveway, both sides, left and right, were all red.
Yeah.
There could have been a crack because we know that she struck his car. That's on video.
Right.
That's evidence. She struck his car.
Yeah.
And maybe the taillight was cracked, but when you see the vehicle leaving the premises, both are red. And when it got to the Canton Police Department and the photograph they took there,
It was shattered.
the red was gone.
It's just completely gone. Yeah.
So if it was there at 5:02 and it wasn't there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when they brought the car back from Dighton, what happened? What happened to the red glass? And how did it all wind up, or a lot of it wind up, back at 34 Fairview? Because it was red at 5:02. And the incident occurred at.
Do you ever suspect
4:30.
that someone's going to come out later on their deathbed and say, "This is what
I don't
happened"?
know. That's always a possibility, especially when there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. And I am kind of surprised at this point that no one has come forth from the police department and been like, "This is actually what happened."
Yeah.
But and there's a lot of parallels to the Lizzie Borden case, and you can purchase Rich and Beverly's book, Cold Case to Case Closed, on Amazon and on eBay. eBay's are the personalization.
Yeah, there's a spot right on the eBay order form that if you want something personalized, and I've had some interesting personalized. Somebody asked me the other day to personalize somebody with the last name of Bowen, and Dr. Bowen, and they said could be related to Dr. Bowen. And I did that, and I'm happy to personalize it any way you want.
Yeah.
You don't quite have that option with Amazon, but if you go through eBay, and the price is the same, no matter whether you go to Amazon or to eBay, and I think you get it a little bit quicker on eBay.
Yeah. Because it's coming directly from you.
Right.
Right.
And from Amazon's coming directly from me as well.
Oh, okay.
But Amazon allows a little bit cheaper rate to ship it.
Yeah.
It's not a lot, but it's a little bit cheaper and it's a little bit slower.
But you do get the personalization.
But with eBay, I can personalize because there's a spot right on the eBay order form.
And it's free.
How would you? It's free. How would you like this personalized? And I've done some curious ones. I told you before about the one that says, "To Elizabeth who prefers to be called Lizzie," which I got a big kick out. And thank you for those.
We're gonna do the Lizzie Borden roast. The dark. I think it should be a dark roast or should it be a breakfast roast. The Lizzie Borden roast.
Well, it depends on which faction you talk to.
Yeah.
Because I have people when I go out speaking about Lizzie Borden who say, "You are absolutely wrong. I know you're wrong."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And my reply to that is, that's possible, but show me the evidence. And in each book, I slide a evidence sheet in there on my two rationales for the reasoning why I have decided who the perpetrator was in that. Right. And there's one from Officer Medley. One side of the page shows the testimony, the written report, police report from Officer William Medley. And on the reverse side is a copy of an article that was in the Fall River Herald on the day after the murder. And if you read both of those, you can draw your own conclusion as to who was at Wybosset Street and when, and who was at the crime scene and when.
The Lizzie book's definitely interesting because it's like Lizzie's speaking to you. It's not an overview of the case, though it does have those parts of the book where it overviews the case. But it's like you're having a conversation with Lizzie.
Well, and that I owe completely to my co-author, Bev Folstadt.
Right.
And Bev lives up in Canada, up in Alberta, Canada. And I want to give a shout out to Bev. And she has, she's written, she is Lizzie's voice throughout the book. And they're separate from what I wrote. And you can see it's in a different font. And she is writing her perspective as a woman on how she would feel to be accused, how she would feel to be incarcerated, because Lizzie was in jail for about 10 months before the trial.
Yeah.
And there's some reasons for that conjecture. Some think that they thought she might be a flight risk, and others thought she needed protection because people were accusing her of murder, and to let her go free might have been detrimental to her. Yeah. And there's some other interesting parallels that go on with that case.
Oh yeah, it's a fascinating case, and those videos will be linked down below. They're also on my channel. You can check them out there. Rich's other books, Ones and Twos and Cock on the Rock, which discuss Ones and Twos is the top 50 or top 100 NFL draft picks over the past 50 years, right? And then William Bradford's Cock on the Rock discusses his life as a Plymouth governor and really his experience and what we perceive it as. You can purchase the official coffee of the podcast, Coffee by Seth. We have all sorts of different flavors. Breakfast blends, dark blends. This is the 6-bean blend right here. It's my favorite. But the mocha, which is what I was drinking today, which is excellent. There's caramel hazelnut. There's cinnamon hazelnut. There's all sorts of flavors that you can purchase from. They're all delicious, and they're local too. It's not like you're drinking Dunkin' Donuts, which is trash water. Don't. And this stuff blows Starbucks out of the way too. If you buy a Grounds Starbucks roast, this got your beat. But that's the show.
Well, thanks a lot, Seth.
Absolutely.
I love coming over, and
I love it.
We'll be meeting again.
I can't wait to do the Black Dahlia case, and part of Caroline's family is related to the Black Dahlia, so maybe we can have a family member of the case on that. I have to work on that in the background. I don't know yet. I can't make any promises, but possibly. That'd be kind of fun to do, But all right, that's been the show, and stay tuned. Check it out. And yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace out.